Hi everybody, welcome. I'm going to do a quick little demonstration, a little dry mock-up here in the garage of the rigging, the equipment, and all that I've been doing to prepare for a ring recovery. Quick synopsis of the ring, how it was lost. We're in a protected marina out here in the Puget Sound. It was a year and a half ago. And a lady lost her ring. It's 100% visual drop. She knows it's actually 3 rings soldered together. Very important to her wedding ring, her engagement ring, and a ring from her late father. And we know that it was dropped in a very specific spot of a local marina, or not a marina, but a harbor. And it's about 30 feet. So with that being said, this kind of sets the stage for you to understand a few things. They were en route on paddle boards, her and her husband, and I believe maybe one other family member. They were coming around the corner from a dock, and they were heading out to the main channel where the boats go through, and they were heading across the channel at a diagonal, and there was a when she actually stood up on the paddle board, she watched her ring fall off her finger and go straight down. So this is 100% verified that we know that the ring is down there. And they looked up for any type of landmarks at the time, and she estimated about 20 feet. Husband estimated about 30 feet. He was on a separate paddleboard, of course, to a mooring buoy. Went out there and did a site inspection. Very shortly after this information was brought to my attention, and I was called in to do a recovery for this. And what I did find was the mooring buoy was still there, and I was just trying to judge what 20 to 30 feet would be like. So I actually had a handheld Garmin GPS, and I captured a waypoint of that mooring ball. It's actually a mooring spot that's a liveaboard that's out there. He's been out there for years. It's not a temporary mooring, but it's a permanent mooring. They actually have a long helical coil, screw, the whole bit. So it's been there for a long time. And fortunately, I got that GPS because that's probably the only thing that's going to save us to even get this ring recovered at this point in time. Shortly thereafter, the city and the local authorities decided to reorganize all those mooring lines and move them out farther so they could have a little more room out in the main channel. And they pulled that mooring anchor out, and it's completely gone now. It's not there. But still have the GPS coordinates of where that was. So fortunately, we have those GPS coordinates to work from. Knowing that they were coming from a specific angle towards the mooring ball, this mooring buoy, gives us an opportunity. 20 to 30 feet, still quite a bit of distance when you're looking for a small ring the size of a quarter, smaller than the diameter of a quarter, and you're trying to get a metal detector over the top of it. Trying to find the correct search routine and the search pattern to get this is actually quite challenging, and it's going to take several attempts, and trying to mark where you've been and where you haven't been, coming back and leaving some implementation down at the bottom, very minimal, as least amount possible without causing any issues with anybody around in the local community. Number one, we can't go down and establish our dive site with a floating mooring ball or anchor or anything like that, because within a day or two the locals will come out, the authorities will come out and have that removed. So that is not an option. So my biggest concern was, even if I went down and left something down there, like a small PVC pipe, marker pole or anything, 30 feet, you ain't gonna see that obviously. You only see a few feet down in the water anyway. Dropping down with limited visibility, even with some of the other contraptions that I have, it doesn't make sense, even with the dive scooter, trying to buzz around, trying to find out where the starting point is, because that's just wasting my gas time. That could be used to be doing searching to be most efficient. Everything's based on setup, a lot of front-end setup, but it's necessary so we can be very efficient on our time once I'm down there doing the search, knowing where I've left off, leave the dive site and come back next week or the following week or whatever the case may be and pick up where I left off at without causing any issues with the local community or boaters or anybody else, or safety. You know, everything is all based off of safety. 100%. We have to be very cognizant of dive safety and all that we're doing as far as that's concerned. So you'll see here in a moment all that's going on. A lot of thought has gone into this after a year and a half. First thought was, this PVC grid that you've seen, 10 by 20 feet, and that's highly unpractical for this type of a dive situation. There's so many you think of my hand as 10 feet by the bottom and 20 feet tall, PVC grid at the bottom, and you're going to sit there and you're going to move it and move it and move it, but then you're going to have some type of implementation down on the seafloor to know where you've been. So you got all these little PVC pipes and poles, marker poles, as you'll see here in a moment. They're not reliable for this kind of amount of movement, because you're going to basically have to grid, because we have a pie shape between this angle and this angle. We're not doing a full 360 because we know they're coming towards the mooring ball, so that puts us in a better situation. It's not like I dropped my cell phone or wedding ring or item of value and I got a GPS coordinates with my phone right away while I was up on the surface in the boat or on the float or whatever, and I was out in the middle of the lake just floating around, and now we're talking a 360 degree. It could be any angle when you go back to that GPS point, but fortunately we had an anchor ball, mooring buoy, and they were heading towards it, and they were not to it yet, but they were 20 to 30 feet from it. Therefore, we know the angle of what they were coming towards, so we know that we have between here and here, like cutting a pie shape. So we have to search every inch of that, and I mean every inch of that. Miss it by an inch, you miss it by a mile. We've all heard the common saying with us metal detectors: you miss it by an inch, you miss it by a mile. The search coil of my metal detector has to get right over the top of that ring. We can't be leaving little gaps and pockets, or else we're going to miss that ring. We're going to have all this energy and effort and nothing to show for it. Potentially missed it. So we have to be very critical and very detailed on our search pattern, and having some overlap and some redundancy, but still making progress to process all this area. Fortunately, we're not talking 100 feet long. We're 20 to 30 feet estimated. So then you go another 30 feet, so maybe you're 60 feet, but we'll get into that discussion in a moment. So what we've come up with, there's a lot of different expensive technologies out there. One of the technologies not everyone is familiar with, but if you look at a black box, which is not really black in an aircraft, all commercial airplanes have to have them. Any large shipping containers with a lot of assets on board will have these. They'll have a little pinger, and it's got a lithium ion battery inside of it, sleep mode, till it gets into the water. The electrodes on it cause it to activate. Plane crashes, the black box has this, goes down to the bottom. It's at 100 feet. It's at whatever, reaches 200 feet or whatever, down at the bottom of the seafloor, or even deeper if we're going, international flights or between continents, we can get pretty deep. So there is a receiver transmitter basically that sends out a signal through the water, audio tones at different frequencies like sonar, and it's also listening. Actually, that one I misspoke a little bit. It's actually listening for that pinger. That pinger is sending out the signal. Bing, 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 bing. It's sending out a ping. The receiver is listening for it, and when it's stronger or fainter, as you move around and you get closer to it, the signal gets stronger, and the search team basically has to narrow in and get the strongest signal and just keep going until they get all the way down to wherever and they just keep going back and forth until they can dial in on it and find that item that has that pinger making that noise. So they have the receiver in their hand. They make some handheld ones, extremely expensive. It doesn't make sense to be going that route when there's other technologies available. With that being said, that is a very neat and interesting technology and has some great applications for lost items. But anyway, with that being said, what we're going to use is basically a Garmin fish finder. So we got sonar. So you've all probably familiar with sonar and how they use it to find sunken ships and boats and boat motors, and also fish, of course, and structure on the bottom of the water. So that's what we're looking at doing. Now the big question is like, okay, so we're going to get on the water, use GPS to get us back over to our GPS waypoint, our pin. That's going to get us in the area of where that mooring ball used to be. But 30 feet down, we need to establish something on the bottom for the duration of this search process until we get it completed. Then it gets removed and pulled out. We're not leaving crap or junk into the marine waters or the lakes. We're going back and cleaning all this stuff up when we get done with our search process. But the point is what is it that we're going to put down there that's going to be visible on basically on a fish finder sonar screen. So doing some research and reaching out, we've come up with some other ideas that search and rescue teams have used, different things that they've used in the past. One of the implementations has been a milk crate with some metal flashing around it. Search and recovery teams at great depths maybe have to recover bodies or cars or vehicles or boats or whatever the case may be, but they want to be able to mark the location if they're working on it. They do a similar thing where they drop down the milk crate. It's resting on the bottom of the sea floor. They got the GPS from up above. Now they can look for that on sonar with their underwater UAV, ROV, underwater remote control camera and lights with the tethered to the surface, and they're remote controlling the little unit that goes down and dives down like a little tiny submarine. Anyway, underwater UAV. They reuse those, and sometimes those are equipped with sonar, and they can see the image on the top, and they can look for their target and get back to that area, that work zone area that they need to be at to do the rest of their search or investigation of whatever they're looking for in those areas. So that's what we come up with. It's been a lot of work. It's been a lot of fun. It's very exciting, and we look forward to seeing what this all looks like once we get into the water. So currently right now I have rigged up on my garage floor, and I'm going to show you a little bit of this right now. Here's what we have. So let me go ahead and just kind of step through this. This is the scenario. Right here we have our target that I just mentioned. The black PVC pipe around it is only for flotation. So this would come out. This rope is actually going to be used in another part of this I'll explain in a moment. But basically we have this milk crate. It's got a cinder block in there, and it's about 19 pounds of ballast right now. So we got 19 pounds of weight. If we come over to the side here, you can see how the aluminum, it didn't necessarily have to be diamond plate. It was just what was available at the hardware store. It's easy to find, and it worked. It did. I paid a little extra for it because it's diamond plate, of course, I know that. But anyway, it's aluminum, and the flashing goes all the way around the outside. So currently I just made this airtight PVC ring, and that's going to basically float in the water and hold this. Everything's tied together. I don't know if you were able to see that, but basically when the water comes up, it picks this up and holds it at the top. We're going to have that in tow. This is the dive flag and float that you've all seen in my previous videos, and it is completely loaded down and upgraded. It has been upgraded with the Garmin GPS fish finder, and this is the amazing system here. We've got the Panoptic system, one of the highest and best quality systems you can buy for fish finding currently. We've got a battery in here. Everything's turns on. This will actually angle, so when you're in the water down here, you can actually angle it down at the appropriate angle, and that'll fire up. We can go on there, go to our waypoint, record all this to our mobile phone. Waypoint, you can pick a waypoint, and so anyway, let's go back out of there. But anyway, here is our transducer. This is amazing setup here. We're just going to turn that off for now. That's just for the demonstration. The lid closes. If it starts to rain or anything, it's not going to fill up full of water. This is going to keep everything fine during the dive. We can take it once we're underway, or we get closer to our area, we can drop this down. Essentially, it's going to drop down in the water column, just like that. And then when we get back, ready to go back, we just bring it up and lock it down. And we got a lot of gear on here right now, but this is what it's going to take. We got our dive scooter here. That's going to be the propulsion to get us out to the spot that we need to be at. This clips on. to a strap that's around my down lower waist area, crotch strap. That's a common setup from the manufacturer. And then we've got a tow line here that I'm going to be holding on to pull this, all this contraption. We've got our dive flag. We've got our flashing light that's been used on a lot of kayaks. It's Coast Guard approved. It is a white light and it's at the right height. I want to get some visibility. We may put some other chaser LED lights on here and hook it up to a battery just for a little bit more visibility, but that's been working pretty good so far. Visibility is critical, and you know, being out in the open waters a little bit. We're not out in open sea. We're in a protected harbor, but still there is boat traffic, so let's just be honest, we know what we're dealing with here. This is an active situation. So we've got all this going on here. We've got some weights in there. So the idea is, I'll step you through this and how this is going to work. We're gonna take the dive scooter and pull all this stuff up out to the general area. And once we get out there pretty close, like I said, we'll drop the transducer. We'll open this. I built this box and this whole kit here with the gas springs. The lid's gonna pop right open. I'm gonna just take my hand in and turn on the switch, turn on the other one for the transducer. Then we're gonna get live scan. We're gonna have full imagery, sonar down to 30 feet. It'll go down to 200 feet actually. It works a little better around 100 feet and up above, but we're dealing with shallower waters as far as that's concerned. So we're gonna have this system turned on. We're gonna navigate in the water, and I can be back here basically while I'm watching that. Kind of convenient that this box actually has a handle here, so I can use it to move while I'm in the water. Since if you've done any research on the Panoptic live scope, and fishing anglers will sometimes put these on a pole mount so they're on the top of their boat. They don't have to move their boat around, but they can turn it 360 degrees and change the angle of where the transducer is to see the different images. Oh, the fish are over that way, start fishing that way, or the fish are over this way, fish this way. Not necessary on such a small float like this, and I'm being in the water. I drop it down and it just stays straight down, and I can use this handle to very easily move the whole thing around and just keep my face on the screen, because I'm central, you know, my orientation floating in the water with dive gear on, looking at the screen. So this is going to work. There's no question about that. We've got our metal detector and all that gear on the side here for when it's appropriate to take that down. With that being said, we're going to get to our waypoint, and at that point, for the very first time, we're going to deploy this milk crate, and we're going to watch it go down. So this is, I'm going to walk you through this a little bit. This is a little extra bit of rope that we're going to be using, but the first thing I would do is take this rope, most likely, and just come over. Doesn't matter in the water, I can just clip it off as long as it's secured to the dive flag and float. We've got some safety lines here and everything, so we got all this rigged up here. So I will come back over and I will grab this rope, because this is going to be my down line. I can do this all from in the water easily enough. I can pull this out. Of course, this is going to be wrapped around here. We're not trying to get entangled in this rope. We're going to come over here, and it's going to be as easy. We've got safety lines on this and everything. So basically, we're going to clip, everything stays clipped. Always keep a connection clipped until you're, and then disengage your other ones, so we're not having anything in case it were to tip over. This being in the water is going to tip around. I can easily just get this over and boom, it's going to be like this. And I'm floating in the water holding on to this. And I'm just going to let it go down. Let it go down slowly. One of the other things I'll probably do, no, actually I'll probably, yeah, I'll just let it down slowly like this at this point. So we're going to establish this as our point of, we're going to get closer over here probably to Waypoint, just make sure the waypoints, so you know, we're close enough to it. Doesn't have to be exact. This isn't going to move throughout the whole search process. It's going to go down and stay down. So whoop, it goes all the way down 30 feet. Once it hits 30 feet and that's down there, we'll come over, tie off a loop, come over to the front part of this dive flag and float, secure the dive flag and float. The remainder portion of this goes back inside of here, and now we have a solid connection. We're not going to have anything drifting away in the current or anything else with the wind blowing or anything. You got 19-pound ballast down at the bottom. This is going to come up. It's going to be my downline that I'm going to dive down on as well. So anyway, let's just pull this over here for illustration purposes. Just know that this line's going to come straight up, and it's going to come right up to the front end of the dive flag and float here. But for illustration purposes, in a moment, I'm going to back this up just a little bit. Just understand that goes straight up. This is still floating out in the water. This isn't going anywhere. We can actually just leave that as it is at the moment. Coming back over here, and at any point in time when I'm doing some of this work, this scooter, dive scooter, is neutrally buoyant because it's weighted for marine water, salt water. It's clipped on down here, and it's in the round, floating around. At any point in time that it happens to get a little bit more than what I need, and without getting caught up, I can go underneath a little bit farther down here. There's another D-ring that I clip off to. When I clip off to the bottom of that other D-ring, that secondary D-ring, this floats around in the water column and it's clipped off to the bottom of the dive flag and float. There's no, the throttle is actually locked off with a thumb screw, so there's no inadvertent throttle kicking on, and it's fine for the duration of the rest of the dive. It's not going to be used during the search part of this dive. We have our downline established. We have a few other heavy items. At this point, after we drop this down, it's not completely necessary, but I may leave the Garmin turned on and recording sonar imagery of all this action going on. The next step that I have to accomplish is getting this, and I'll have one more pole without this piece on it most likely, and I'll explain that in a minute. These pieces have to be along with these two weights, and the third weight are going to come over here and be a part of this rope system to get it down to the bottom close to that. So keep following me here. It's quite a process for sure, but it does make sense. We're at the top. We're not pressed for air consumption. We have visibility around us. We know when at any point in time if we need to pull this out and start waving it around to get someone's attention, or just get out of the way with a dive scooter. I can always leave all this. It's not going anywhere, and if I need to make a quick ditch out because a boat's coming through on the surface, I just grab my dive scooter and whoop, buzz out the side a little bit and deal with the situation as it occurs, keeping full awareness of situational awareness around me. But this isn't a lot of speedboats going through here at this area, so I already know the dive site pretty well. I've been out there several times. With that being said, I've got this here. I can actually take this, and I will most likely figure out a way to secure this so it's not going everywhere, or just hang on to it. I'm gonna have to, basically I'm gonna need to clip on these weights and the end of this pole. But if we run the line through, we've got a lot of line to work with here. Just bring it on through. We're gonna probably bring this off because we're going to take the PVC marker poles down with us. Those will probably be easier to pull off, so without having undone this one. I can pull these off. You know, some of this is going to take a little working out, and I'll think about this a little bit more. This is the first dry run. That can clip off, or actually that doesn't even need to clip off to me. It can clip off around this rope. Temporarily clip it off to myself, just so it's not floating away or going down to the bottom by itself. I have this rope. I will pull carefully, manage this, and pull this free. This will start to go, and then I'll run the cord through it. May clip it off real quickly, just like that. Or actually, better yet, actually that will probably be fine. Clip pipes off, and then in the water, I will carefully have all this, and I will pull, holding on to this, I will begin to bring all the weights out of the boat, and this whole mess is going to get dropped down to the bottom. Whoop. I'm just going to lightly, easily let the rope down, and it's going to be a little ways away from the down line, but still relatively close. It hits the bottom. I'm going to lock this rope off. We can bring the rope, we'll probably hang on to it or bring it around the other side here. We may decide to have it secured or tied off. You let a little more rope out temporarily. You just do one of these numbers. This is really quick. It's going to be a hell of a lot more secure because I am not going to let go of that. It's critical that I have that and not let go of it. Come over here. We're going to grab the metal detection equipment. On the back of the metal detection equipment, we will have another bolt snap for the Excalibur. He'll be clipped on. He'll clip onto the right D-ring on my dive chest, or dive strap on my chest. There's a common practice that I've done several times and very comfortable and familiar with that in that location. Still having full access to my regs. Not to worry, this isn't the first time I've done this. I've done these and I've run these drills several times, and every bit of it has to be thought out. You have to be comfortable with what you're doing in your process, and I've built muscle memory on a lot of these practices that are being displayed here. Dive safety is first and foremost. Being able to ditch any of this equipment at any point in time without having any concern about it is also first and foremost dive safety. With that being said, there's some out there that will have some concerns for obvious reasons that aren't familiar with the dive practices that I'm portraying here. By no means do any of this without fully thinking through it and taking your time to build up the skill set and the understanding of what you're doing and what you're taking on. This doesn't happen in one night. With that being said, I'm going to continue on with this demonstration because there is a lot of process to it. So right now we have the dive float at the surface. We have our milk crate, our sonar imagery, basically our sonar target for the dive site. Then we can get over here. Remember that the dive propulsion scooter is going to be clipped off underneath this dive float, just kind of bobbing around underneath. It's pretty much out of my concern at this point in time and secured. It's actually out of visibility too. With these items being down at the bottom and everything, at this point I'd be okay. We're secure with that and everything. Whoop. We may just leave the lid off because I have dive gloves on or whatever, but the screen, but we can basically just bring the lid down. At that point, this would be in the water. Potentially I might bring it up and just get out of the water and bring it up top, or I'm actually may leave it down in the water column just so it's not hanging up in the air just a little bit more obscure. It's sitting in the water, doesn't draw as much attention. Passing boats and stuff saying, ooh, look at this nice piece of equipment that we want to come steal. These are legitimate concerns, believe me. So that goes back down, or that stays down. So we got these 2 lines in the water getting ready for our descent. One of the other things I'll most likely do is come over, grab this, and maybe just stow it somewhere on the top. The metal detector won't be there. You know, the reality is I'll probably leave it in the water because it's just easier. We can take some of these and just clip them off closer so it's not floating around all over the place. You know, that can sit right out here behind the raft, bobbing around the water. That's fine. That's not going to cause any issues or troubles with anything I'm doing. Remember, that's over there. My down line is attached to the front of this thing, so when I come up, I'm not going to be banging my head on that over there. Come up slowly. You're going to do a safety stop at the end of your dive and take a look up. You're going to have full common sense of what you're doing. You're just bopping up and hitting your dive flag and float and getting all tangled up and being stupid. But these are legitimate things you have to think about to make sure you're putting yourself in a better position. So at this point, probably take this guy here. This rope here would have been stowed inside of the boat. It's not out in the water. A lot of times what I'll do is I'll wrap it around my dive glove and I'll stow it real nicely back behind this little piece here, so it's just a little bit cleaner and not a lot of mess. Entanglement is always a big thing with ropes. Everyone gets freaked out about it for good reason. You don't want to get tied up in your own rope. Then I can come over here. I got my down line. Got a metal detector on the one side. We got our right hand available to clear our nose as we're going down. Got this in the left hand, and I'll probably I will figure this out. So we're doing this, you know, I can always grab a handle here and pinch my nose with my left hand, hold this in the right hand, go down slowly, and as I'm going down, I'm going to be winding. I'm going to come down and wind this up. We're going to keep the 2 lines separate. We're not going around getting sloshed all over the place and trying to tie up these lines and get all tangled. This line is going to be under tension because the reality is with the dive float at the top, any bit of wind or current, this is going to be at an angle. It's not going to just be straight up. It'll be a little bit of an angle, but it's going to be pretty much taut. So we're going to work our way down slowly down our down line, and once we get to the bottom and establish, and then I have this rope and I still have it, I'm going to be real close to this area. We'll be down at the bottom, and we'll do what we have to do to get this line over here. So this may go inside, which is actually a decent idea. May clip it off or whatever, and then come over here, because then we'll have access to this rope, and we'll bring all this stuff. We'll get it what we need off of this to get started, and we'll start working this area. Yeah, it looks like a little bit of a mess, but hey, we'll clip this off. We're gonna have one more of these, probably cut it about right here, or maybe even down about here. I only want this on one side, so it's a very strong and secure point for my anchor point of my grid line search that I'm gonna do. The reality is, if we have where the boat's at, let's say that the angle that we think that the lost item is somewhere out there, we're going to come over here and we're going to start working our way to the right. Of course, this is all going to be done on the surface. Before we go down, we're going to take a bearing compass for our digital compass, so we can know where we're going to run our initial line to start with, and then start doing our search over. Run a rod through here, screw this down. That's going to be a bit of work. It's always a bit of work to get this all set up correctly, but once that's screwed down, so far it doesn't have to go all the way down. a bit of this will go on the silt pretty easily probably, and then it'll start getting a little tighter, and we'll judge and say, hey, that's good. Good anchor point. I anticipate to get this relatively close to this over here. After that gets done, we're gonna leave, this will be, that's straight up. That's not gonna be an issue. So that's going to be out of the way. This is going to be down, and then we'll start working these weights. We're not going to let our eyes off of any of this stuff because we don't lose any of it. Limited visibility. These guys here will probably, I can also clip those off to me or off to this here. We'll be working right here. We'll have everything right here real close. The first thing we're going to do, this is not a safety marker, but a cheap insurance policy. I'm gonna drive one of these down in the silt, and it's not gonna be attached to anything. It's gonna be right next to this general area. So we'll have this guy in the silt as the marker pole. There's a potential I could float little balls, little small little round ball of some sort, maybe even like a racket ball or something that's gonna, you know, like a mooring buoy but much smaller. I don't want the poles coming out, but you know, those could be seen on sonar actually, just like a fish bladder, air bladder. Those are some things I'm gonna work out in some shallow water testing, see how they show up on the sonar screen. And that would be, you know, from the surface, look down with this really cool fish finder and actually see some of those things from the surface. Could provide to be pretty helpful information throughout this process. We also have our dive weight here. So this looks like a bunch of stuff here, a mess, but the reality is what we're going to get to. We'll figure out how to do this properly without losing anything. This bucket being here is probably going to most likely be a good spot to temporarily. Remember, this will still be connected. It'll be up like this. And when I let this down on the water column, I've got it, if you look, I've got it rigged so it's going to come and land flat. That's the intention. That's why the ropes are rigged that way, for a very specific reason. I don't want it coming down crooked and upside down and being all goofy and all that kind of crap. I just want it to go straight down slowly as I let it down, and it'll land like that. It's going to be in that configuration. With it being in that configuration, I can use this as a temporary holding container so I'm not losing these items in the silt. The other thing I will probably do is clip this weight. I'm going to have a lot of extra slack up there, so if that weight even drops down in there, which is fine, this weight's going to be important at the end of the dive. You have to think these things through. You're going to get yourself screwed and wish you had thought it through a little bit closer. Remember, this has been an ongoing thought out process over 1.5 years. This didn't happen in 5 minutes over a beer. We've put a lot of effort and thought into this, as you can see. Reality is, at this point, this pole is going to be in like this. This is our search rope, and how I'm going to want to connect this, I'll probably save my clip that off on my gear. I'll retain that, and I believe I can make either a larger, I can make this loop a little bit larger so I can actually do a slip through the handle, and it would basically wind up being like that. Just for the purpose of this demonstration, these are the things that, running through this, I can just do this for right now. It doesn't have to be anything super special. It's just, this is what I've thought of. This is 10 pounds kettlebell, concrete kettlebell with plastic, encased in plastic, and this is just going to rest down in the silt. Whoop.
It's just gonna sit there. It's not going anywhere. My anticipation is to get this anchored enough where it's deep, where it's gonna be pretty solid. So the kettlebell is gonna be, you know, silt to here, kettlebell resting at the bottom. This rope here, I have marked this rope from the end going, so right every 5 feet. So you got 5 feet on a white heat shrink. Every 5 feet it gets 10 feet, 15, 20. It's all the way up to 100 feet on this. We're only going to take this rope out, this line. This is my search line. Say I want to start over this way. At this point in time, I'm going to be with that. I'm going to have to take this guy and this other marker pole, and I'll have another piece of this without, because it's going to be pushed in and pulled out quite often throughout this process. I don't want the helical screw on the bottom. Just to recap, this is going to be shoved in the silt as just a secondary marker position. We're going to come down here and shove this into the silt. So that'll be in the silt as a marker, as our first spot that we started. And the reality is I might take 3 of these down there. Having 3 of those, it's probably going to be a better idea. So I have 3 of those, and you'll see for what the reasoning for that is here in a moment. So say we come out here, and this line here is going to be stretched out to at least 60 feet, most likely. That length is going to be more calculated and thought about exactly how long I want to go. Having the rope and having some clips, we'll figure out exactly how I'm going to tie this off. The reality is rope, it's around this thing. You know, we might just take enough rope off of this spool to just tie it off. It doesn't have to be super fancy, it just has to work. It's going to be down there, it's not going anywhere. We'll probably have another clip available for this as well. Have that on us. Just to make it easier at this end, so we know what we need. Bring the rope around, bring this like this. Whoop. A few different ways we can rig this, of course. And I think we just do it like this. It's going to lay down on the bottom. So this will be pulled so it's taut, and then we'll have our other metal hole, and we're just going to stick it right down in there. So this is now a tight line. We'll drive that down in the silt by hand as much best as we can, get it established real firm. We'll have the 2 marker poles, and we'll temporarily just leave them both right next to it. So we're not going back and forth with those at this point. Those will just be right next to this. So they're next to it. We're going to swim. We're going to swim all the way back down to the other end to get started with our search. I'm always going to probably start to search down at my pivot point, my heavy duty pivot point, because we're going to try to overextend. I mean, I just want to be down here, get most of my, there's going to be a lot of overlap in this area of the search. Once you start going out, there's going to be a lot of extra work down here, but once you get to the other end, you'll see what I mean in a moment. As you remember, I have like a little D-ring down at the waist belt. a belt buckle area, which is a crotch strap system for my dive scooter. We're going to be tethered. This clip here is going to be replaced with one that's a quick release that's easy, so I can ditch just by pulling the side off. It's going to be a very common use system that they use in safety diving when tethered divers go down in active waters and rivers, and if they need to cut loose, they just pull sideways and everything falls off and you're completely free of this. But here's the point. This is very critical and key part of what's going to help me here. So I'm going to clip here, and you can see this is obviously a lot larger on this. It's going to go around the search rope, and it's going to be able to move freely with that rope being taut back and forth. And I'm going to be right at the bottom with my metal detector, and it's going to be clipped off to myself. And I'm going to be down here. It can be trailing behind me, not in my way, and I'm going to be going back and forth with this rope with my metal detector going all the way down. And there's going to be times my hand will be on this rope. There's going to be times where I'm going to get it. I'm going to have to go over here. This is going to be laying down in the silt. The silt's going to be up. I can't see much of anything. It's going to be pretty bad conditions, to be honest. I'm going to be over here working, and I'm going to need to find that rope again. Now, if I'm not clipped onto that rope, you gotta remember my legs are on the bottom. I'm not floating all over the place. I'm silting the heck out of this thing, but I'm not really getting off of my grid line. I work no ring. Okay, this was something else, whatever. Garbage goes in my little garbage bag or whatnot. Yeah, so then back to the search. I can't find this rope. I just take my hand, bring my hand down to my crotch strap. That little lanyard, is going to bring me right back. I can throw that behind me, between my legs, my hands back on my search line. Therefore, I'm not wasting any time getting off of my search line trying to search for it. Everything is about efficiency with this dive. Getting the most out of my gas, my time down here, and getting as much search done as every single time I dive down here. Keep going. I'm going to go all the way down to the end. Oh, I've reached the end. It's time to reset this. So then at this point, my anticipation is to just take my hands and pull, I'm going to work it out, pull out the metal spike, whoop, take my metal detector, and however long that I've 5 feet potentially, or just a little bit shy of 5 feet away, I'm going to measure, and I'm going to send it in the right angle. Most likely I'll take and stick it, whoop, or what I'll probably wind up doing, actually what I'll wind up doing is using one of the plastic pipes here. I'll shove it right next here so it's outside of this weight. Then I'm gonna, so I know where I was, so we'll have a little bit of a visual reference, 5 feet or whatever, so I know how much. I'm going to take this weight, move it over, and make sure it's as tight as I can get it with the right length between metal detector and there. Bury it into the silt, and then this thing gets reestablished with the metal. This pole is probably going to be left at the very first spot, so I know where it was that I started this search. There's another item that's potentially coming, which is going to be a GPS buoy. At this point of the conversation, this has not been delivered from Germany. These guys have just developed this device. It is a floating GPS receiver built off of a Arduino microcontroller, and it's inside of a PVC pipe. It's extremely awesome, and basically I'm going to have a dive spool, and at this point, if I want to get a GPS pin of this exact location, it's going to be about that tall, a round cylinder of PVC plastic. It's completely, it has all electronics in it. I'm going to send it to the top. Once it goes up to the top for about 30 seconds, it'll acquire about 5 GPS pins and record those to a micro SD card. I'll crank it back down on the dive spool reel that's already on its way. That's been ordered. Once that gets tied off, clip back on, it's behind me. It's out of the picture. It's not causing any issues. I will have that for later on, knowing exactly where I was if I ever need to reestablish where I started. This is a secondary pole that'll be outside of this loop. So we're gonna have the metal pole there, and we're gonna have this here. Now, the reason for that, let me just unclip here so I can stand up here. There's a very specific reason that I want to do that. We've got this rope out here. At any point in time, I'm very well aware that there's potential that a boat could be dragging an anchor. It's not all that often in this area, but there's potential they could be dragging an anchor. And if their anchor comes up and catches my search rope, if I'm either there or not there, they could start pulling on this and move it all over the place and move it out of the way from its original location. Now, if this pole is not captive and it's just over on the edge here, the chances and reality is that's still going to remain there. If I ever have to reestablish the rope, that's going to be my little insurance policy. So we're going to have the metal pole down the middle here, and then we're going to have this plastic one, and they're just going to keep going every time we move it. This is just going to be outside of it. That was the same intention for the plastic one down at the other end, although this is going to be so solid and driven in. If a boat catches it with an anchor, they're just going to move this end around and pull it around. They're going to pull up this rope and find this weight. Oh my God, what's going on here? You know, that's what they're going to do. They're going to probably either get this up or not get it up. At some point, they're just going to cut the rope, take off with all that part of it, and that'll just have to be replaced most likely. They're not going to know anything about this. They're not going to know anything about this. 30 feet, they're going to have this rope coming up. Oh, I can't have this out here. What the hell, this idiot put some crap out here. These damn people. Cut it, let's go, take it. Got ourselves a weight and some rope. So what? If that's the case, that's the case. It's a bit of a gamble, but anyway, we're going to have that GPS device. We can still go back and pick up where we left off. It's very critical to know how much effort I put into this. I know this isn't going to happen in one dive. It could happen in 1 or 2 dives, but it's going to be over a course of several dives in a process, as we've already seen happen in another situation for a different recovery by another gentleman that we know. So that being said, we're going to come across at some point, say this spot here is where the lost item is, and this is, you know, just pretend this is a lot longer, you know, say from there to here is our 60 feet or a little bit longer, and we're just going to keep coming down. So let me get down here. Here's a great example. I'm going to be metal detecting on my rope. I'm going to move it over and swim back down to the other end. Going to metal detect the new line, move it over, swim back down. Always at the same time continually monitoring our air and how much time we have with our gas. At any point that we have to ditch, we're going to come right back up. This all stays down. We're going to come right back up and in the dive, but we'll get to that in a point. The whole thing is, at some point, we're going to come over. Got it. Woohoo! Yay! How much gas do we have? We have another tank. You know, I have up to 3 tanks for a day's diving. A day's worth of diving. If we're on tank 1 and getting low, we'll just go up and get a new tank, take our proper rest break, and then go back down and clear all this crap out. Or if we have to come back on another day to clear out some of this, so be it. It's okay. At this point, okay, it's time to end the dive. We didn't find it yet. The cool thing is that I have every 5 feet. Say I only get down about 30 feet on this rope. It's very critical, and I think it's smart that we think about marking the rope with distance, because I can tell how much progress I made down the rope. Say I make it to 30 feet and I've got a 60-foot line. Hey, it's time to end this dive. Time to call it, head the other way. I know that I went at least 30 feet on that next time I go down. If it's the same day or next week or 2 weeks later, I can get back into the system, go back to 30 feet, and continue the rest of it and continue the process. As they say, rinse, wash, repeat. That's basically it until we find the ring or our item of value. Coming back, say it's time to end the dive. Say that we haven't found what we're looking for. So we're going to leave this established underwater. That's fine. Come back. We get back over here. And this is all gonna stay in there. We're gonna come back over here. And now what we've got this guy. And I haven't decided yet. This being 19 pounds, pretty heavy. But I know that's got some plate on the side on all four corners. Water could push it around a little bit. It's gonna be in the silt. It might lock itself in. The reality with this crate here, I might take a small bit of this rope in here and just make a little lanyard that'll tie off to this really strong anchor, just so this doesn't go away. Probably be a pretty prudent thing to do. And then outside of this whole system, this is all a closed circuit, and this will be solo by itself, and I'll just drive it into the silt next to it. And probably most likely I would like to put some type of a small, like I said earlier, a small rubber ball tied off that's not going to get loose. So I just have a little bit of an air bladder on top of this thing, so if I want to try to locate that or see what it looks like with the fish, this sonar, that could be very interesting. Something that's not too much that's going to pull this thing out over. That's the biggest thing. That this being slick, if you have anything with any amount of buoyancy on it over time with the waves and stuff, it might just pull that out. So that may not be something I do. I might just put the ball or something, hook it onto this part, you know, down here, hook a little line here and have something floating off of this. That would be fine because it ain't going nowhere. Here's how we get out. We still maintain, so we can basically unclip from the basket from our milk crate. Might have a little float, holds this up a little bit, or it might just stay in there. Now we've got our 5-pound weight, and if it's time to end the dive, I don't want this to get all wrapped around like this, and then I'm pulling up and like, oh crap, when I get to the top. That would be not ideal at all. So I will probably take this out, and I'll probably just swim over a little bit so it's free and clear of that whole system. Now I'm in a normal dive configuration that I've used so many times. Even if this gets drug around a little bit, I'm not concerned about it. That sits at the bottom. I'm gonna go up there to our safety stop, do our little 3-minute safety stop. We're gonna have our metal detector on us, and you know, hopefully we're gonna have our item of value recovered. Come up to the top, and then it's pretty straightforward. This can still float back behind us, I don't care. I'm going to wind this guy back up, bring him back into the boat and secure him, and then come over, clip in, get the scooter, get the hand line out, tow all this back to shore. Yeah, it's going to be awesome. A lot of work, a lot of preparation has gone into this, but it's definitely got some promise. And this is how, one of the ways you can do a grid search. I've kind of coined this search, it's pie-shaped cut kind of search. So you got a pie and you're going to move across. I've kind of coined it like the windshield wiper effect. You got a pivot point and your windshield wiper, and at some point the bug you're looking for, it's going to come across, you're going to come across and intersect it and get that. And that's the whole point of this. And then dive back down, dive out to the furthest end, grab all this crap down here, collect it up, and start rolling the line in as you work your way all the way back over here. And at any of that time and point, you got a couple options. If we're completely done with the dive, most likely we're going to leave our line connected to this. If it was like we had found our item, we leave the line I had hooked up to this before left onto that. Probably going to take this and have it like we had before, everything tied off to this. After we get this removed and all of our plastic pipes, everything's going to be, all the tools and implements will be on this guy. Yeah, I just go up the, you know, have my downline, I'll go up that slowly. As I have this spool, I'll just let some line out. It's all down there weighted, and keep that over there. We're not going to get all tangled up in it. Go up to the top, and then once we get to the surface, we can start offloading any equipment that's on my person after I clip all this rope. If I clip this rope off to my float, take my metal detector, can restow it on the side of the dive float, and any other things that are extra weight on myself as I'm on the surface with my BC fully inflated. I can offload that and secure it onto the raft. Then I can start pulling. Basically, there'll be 20 pounds in this piece here. I'll start rolling it up on that dive spool and just pulling it up. I've done similar things before like this. Once it starts coming up, then I can put the pole back on, get the pipes back on, stow that, get that up into the float, and then start working on my other line, which will be basically pulling this guy up as the last thing I'll do. Once we get it up and we have this guy, we'll have this guy already prepped. We'll have him pulled out again so he's at length, whatever length it is that we want to work with. That's probably a little bit, you know, he may be somewhere out there like this. However we work that. This guy will come back up. We'll put him back inside of there. I think that the way we work this, flip him off, so that way if this tips over sideways or whatever and this milk crate gets loose, it's still attached to that flotation. We're not going to lose it. Then we just pick it up. But this thing here is going to float like that, hopefully. Should be fine.
Alright guys, that's the setup. Got any comments and concerns, you know how to get a hold of me. We can have a private discussion about that if we'd like. Hoping the best for this search and to be able to use this gear for some other searches as well. Most definitely the Garmin Fish Finder with the Panoptix live scan system is completely amazing. The quality of sonar that's been made available in the last 3 to 5 years has just been phenomenal. We can actually see fishing lures trickle down and fish grabbing them as the anglers bring them up on the actual sonar screen, which is not anything they've ever expected to even happen before. So it's pretty high-end equipment for sure. It doesn't locate a ring laying on the bottom or a small item on the bottom. You most certainly will find outboard motor laying on the bottom of the sea floor though. If it's got enough of a contour to it potentially. We're gonna have to work around and see how that looks though a little bit. There's probably still gonna be some question if that's the item you're really looking for, but larger items, it will definitely show up. So we come back on another attempt, another day. We're gonna take our dive, flag and float as we've indicated in the beginning of this demonstration. We're gonna have our Garmin Panoptix sonar system on board. We're going to use the GPS on the fish finder to get back over the general area in the water of where our dive site is. It's 30 feet down below. We're not going to be able to see it. It's not visible. We don't have any floating buoys or any marker buoys or anything, so then we're going to rely upon our Panoptix down view scanning sonar to locate this lovely piece of structure. It's going to be at the bottom, and once we locate that, we'll take our 5-pound weight and rope and we're going to drop that down. With that dangling around in the water column, I'm going to be focused at the back screen of my dive flag and float with my Garmin sonar. I'm going to be looking at that, and my intent is to try to drop this right in the bucket if I can, or very close to it. Now depending on what angle that the sonar is scanning, we're going to see how close. We're going to do some tests in some shallow water and see what the reality is on this. The reality is it might look like I'm dropping it, and I could be over here like this. I'm dropping it there, but if we take little sonar, take our dive float, and we just change the orientation on the surface, so we come over here, we might see, oh my gosh, there's a gap. We might have to just try to pick it up and drag it over. You know, who knows what we're gonna do. We may wind up over here. We might drag it over here like this. We might have to come around a few times. I don't know what the reality of this is gonna be. It's gonna be very interesting to say the least. At some point, I'm hoping to get pretty close. It doesn't have to be in the basket, I just want it to be close. Once I get down there, start descending down this down line, I want to be able to find this target without too much effort of having to search around, limited visibility and wasting time. If I can get it close to this, even if it's like, you know, relatively close, and I can get close to this area, you know, I might venture around once I get down there, just do a little 360 around my dive rope down line, and I might bump into this, and you know, whoop, we can hook it in there. We can clip the two systems together and then continue on with our dive search down the down line. So that's what we hope for. It's going to be very interesting to see what limitations, what realities, and what happens in between. But we're a heck of a lot closer than we were before we started all this. So there you go. Cheers, guys. Thanks a lot for watching. Thanks a lot for all your comments, support, and tips, and all of your other thoughts and well wishes, and the same to you guys. If you've lost your ring or special item of value, please get in touch with me at theseattleringhunter.com as soon as possible so I can arrange to do a search for you.